You asked the question, do you like planning? I hate planning. Hate it with a passion. And yet I plan everything. I've learned over the years that it's not about the plan, it's about the planning process. Um, what do you say? Measure twice, cut once. I want to share a couple of thoughts beyond planning. Started reviewing Ron Price's book, the Complete Leader, as part of our Complete Leader program, and looking at various concepts in it and seeing what I can share with you in these little video clips. I was talking to a client the other day about this concept of it's all about the planning rather than the plan. No plan, we know this survives engagement with the enemy, but if we have no plan, there's nothing to change. I also shared from the concept or the thought that when we look at planning, you see when they're over my shoulder, our one thing plan for our business, that when I look at planning, I'm really interested in a flexible plan, not a plan that's written in stone, a plan that can be varied and changed. And this ability to write plans, to think strategically, and then in thinking strategically, to write a strategic plan that you can think big, but big and specific, and narrow it down to very particular things to do, where you can actually schedule things, you can chunk out the time, put them in your diary like a meeting, things to do in a diary like a meeting, focus on things that really matter, have a real sense of congruence, a real sense that the moment makes sense, that what you're doing makes sense. These are really important things to have, and really important skill for a leader. A leader who can't plan and organise really can't lead. People look to a leader to bring clarity of thought. We talk about futuristic thinking, we talk about conceptual thinking, but they look at a leader to bring clarity of thought and process to that thinking. So bring the clear thinking, bring the conceptual thinking, bring the futuristic thinking, but bring structure to it. Don't have it sit out there on its own, and then having brought structure, bring a system that you can actually apply the plan and make the plan work. We often say that a grade B plan applied in a grade A way is better than a grade A plan applied in a grade B way, and I believe that. The secret to successful planning, as I say, is to be flexible, to notice what happens, notice the outcomes of the plan, then change the plan. There's a great model in the book called Plan, Do, Check, Act. And Ron makes a point, you make a pact with yourself that you will resist the temptation to start a project before you have a workable plan to get to the finish line. And I really like that. I think it's a great little quote. And always remembering that the plan will not survive engagement with the enemy. Another point that he makes in the book, and this that has always struck me, is when you look at that one thing plan, it's very, very simple. Simple, not easy. It takes a lot of intellectual effort to actually put it together. But it's very, very simple. And one of the things I hate about plans is that the plan sort of takes over. The plan becomes sort of the end in itself. So I think you have to, like setting a goal, for example, I'm always amused when I see people setting like very specific, very detailed goals down to the finest point for something that's 10 years out. We don't know what's going to happen in 10 weeks or 10 months, never mind 10 years. So when you're looking out there in the long, 5 years out, 10 years out, it be specific and set specific goals and targets, but recognise that we don't know. You get more specific as you get closer in time. Why is planning and organisation important? How are planning and organisation learned? Well, I think very simply put, if there's no plan, there's no direction. People are wandering aimlessly. You have to become meaningful and specific and give direction and focus. And the way you learn to plan is apply the model plan, do, check, act. I mean, very, very simple. Plan, do, check, act. So identify the problem or the opportunity, whatever you want to do. Analyse the information, gather information, understand what's going on. Train those involved with the process and systems in place. Try a little experiment, do a small, I really love this in software today, the way people do the minimal viable product. They try things, they test things, they see what works, get feedback, develop, see what people want, what people don't want. So this idea of implement a small experiment, review the results of the experiment, he says, Compare against planned results, look for unintended consequences. And then having done all that, either abandon the plan, change the plan, or standardise the plan and move into action. So it's a really nice little loop. It's sort of a closed loop as well, sort of self-reinforcing loop. And that information, when you act, you get feedback which informs the plan, allows you to develop it again. A couple of other quotes that I really want to read to you. Stephen Covey, you remember 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the greatest books ever read. It's sort of interesting to see how his truths are universal and timeless. Here we are years later, and that was the first book in personal development I ever read, which is sort of interesting. I came across in a friend's apartment down the south of Spain when I was on holidays, and I ran out of reading material. I started reading it and I never looked back. But it's a timeless book, and he says to begin with the end in mind. How deep you go with your planning tools depends on what you want to do yourself, how much planning you want to do, how important it is to have a lot of detail, as I say, further out, perhaps less detail. Then the idea of breaking things down. You see in our plan there, we look out typically 10 years to have big, hairy, audacious goals and enduring purposes and so on. But we very quickly get down to 3 years. 3 years seems to be a realistic time frame when people get a sense of, yeah, I can do something in 3 years. It's long enough to do something, but it's not so far out that I don't know what I'm doing. You know, that's way out there and sort of meaningless. And then quickly get down to 12 months, 90 days, 30 days. But we don't focus on goals. We focus on things to do. So when we actually get into the planning process, we very quickly move into action, into activities. What are the things that we need to do? And we implement those things, we learn from those, and we modify the plan. And the last comment, I just mentioned it earlier, but I just want to say it again. I really believe in chunking. You identify the important things you do, you take them out and you stick them in your diary. You chunk out the time to do them. If you don't do this, it doesn't happen. Life catches up with us. And that's why I always work out in the morning. Because if I don't work out in the morning, I'm not going to work out. Life just catches up, the day catches up with me, and other demands catch up with me. So they're my thoughts for you on planning and organising. Really important activity. My closing comment, I think, just to wrap it up, is all this stuff is amazing, but every day you should be sitting down at the beginning of every day saying, what's the one thing I can do today, such that by doing it everything else will be easier or even unnecessary, as per Gary Keller's book, The One Thing. And if you don't know what that is, you have to ask yourself a really serious question. The only way you can know what that is you have a plan that takes you from the future back to today. This is what you need to do today to make this happen, to create the future that you want. And we talked about this idea of creating your own future, futuristic thinking. So think about this thing in planning and organising. Key ability, key competency of an effective leader. So they're my thoughts. Hope they're of value.